America missionary in the world. You will begin to understand the spiritual darkness and the dilemma within. I think I have for you one of the finest illustrations to show to you how a recognition of a man's lostness served as a propelling force for the first missionary America ever sent to overseas was Adoniram Judson. Judson, if you have not read his biography, please read it. One of the finest minds America has ever produced. I'm very proud that he came to my country of origin, Burma. Judson was so brilliant. When he was 12 years old, he was teaching the adult Sunday school class the book of Revelation from the original language of. That's not intimidating, I don't know. What is he was so brilliant that people become petrified of Mr. Judson, and rightly so. When he got into college, he made the fatal mistakes of thinking he was more brilliant than God. And his intellectualism got to him till he disavowed his fate. Then he became a terror. He went to Providence College in Rhode Island in America. He became a terror to his classmates, who were Christians. Because Judson was so powerful in debate that he would knock them off any of their beliefs and they would avoid him. He had a roommate, a fellow by the name of Jacob Ames. And Judson became very close. Jacob Ames came into Providence College professing to believe in Christ. He graduated out of Providence College professing to be an atheist, and he gave the credit to Ed in our own Judson. His mother didn't know how to deal with him, so she just prayed for him. Father tried to talk to him, but he figured he knocked the faith out of his own heart. So he decided to leave Judson alone. Many years went by, and the faculty members kept a close eye on Judson, wondering what such a genius was doing to do with his life. And one day, writing to the city of New York to be trained for theater. At the end of his interview, he was riding back to Boston, and it was a long, long ride back. It was so exhausted, he stopped at an inn and asked the manager if he could check in for the night. And the manager said, "Sir, we really can't give you a room. They are full," Mr. Judson said. "Mr. Manager, so I try. I am tired, I'm falling asleep. Would you let me sleep in the front hall? I'll get up before it's down and live here. Because I'm so tired, I'll pay the price of a room." "I just need to lie down," he said. "Mr. Judson, I do have a room that's valuable, but I wasn't going to rent it out because adjacent to that room is a man who is very sick from his body, emanating a stench of decay. He's dying, he's crying, an alternate fit of stupefaction and raving and profanity. But if you want that next room and he will bother you, I'll give it to you." Judson said, "He won't bother me." But Judson lay awake at night, listening to the profanity, listening to a man untold agony crying out for help. And Judson tried to smother the sound. Stage stand turned, and gradually his song subsided. And Judson fell asleep next day as he was paying his bill. He said, "What happened? Did the man feel better?" He said, "No, Mr. Judson. The man died. He died at the early hours of the morning." Judson said, "Out of curiosity, what do you do? A stranger come into your inn and he die on your hands?" He said, "Yeah, it does pose a problem, but I'll tell you something. I have looked over his papers and trying to contact the next of kin. I cannot put together how a man of his credentials, His brilliance has died such an enormity death all alone. In this condition, he was an honor graduate from Providence College, Rhode Island. Mr. Judson. His name was Jacob Ames. And Judson paused for a moment and said, "What did you say his name? What did you say his name was?" And he said his name was Jacob Ames. The Providence College graduate had an Adoniram Judson in his biography entitled "The Golden Shore" say, "This I got onto my horse and I started to ride back, and I could not see in front of me, for the very tears began to pour down my face. And as the tears were pouring down my face, two words were pounding into my heart, as the hooves of the horse were pounding into the ground. And the two words were death and hell, death and hell," he said. "I got off my horse, knelt on the dusty road, repented bitterly of the way I had betrayed my God for Jacob Ames. Now I lay deliverance up an account of his own soul, because I had knocked out any faith that had in God. He checked out of the United States and went to India, was kicked out of Calcutta and went into Burma. Do you know that? His first wife died out of oriental disease, her body contacted for which she had no sense of immunization. Out of sheer loneliness, he remarried. His second wife died. 3. All 4 of his children died. His missionary college died. And this man was laboring almost in a funeral director's camp. Losing all of his colleagues still, finally he himself realized he was an awesome battle. It took him 7 years to lead the first Burmese to Jesus Christ. And yet, if you read Don Richardson's book, Eternity in Their Hearts, he will tell you something that Judson did, which Burma will always be indebted to. As a matter of fact, you go to Adoniram Judson's hometown today in Malden, Massachusetts. You see, Judson was imprisoned by the Burmese authority because of successful preaching of the gospel, as many started to turn to Christ, and Judson was put into a boat after being imprisoned for 18 months. And people could not recognize him anymore, and the Burmese authorities knew he was going to die a few days away, so they put him in a boat to send him back to the United States. He never made it. He died and rode back in Meriden, Massachusetts. There is a small gravestone that say, "Adoniram Judson's born. Such and such died, such and such. The ocean is a sepulchre. The Burmese Bible is a monument. His record is on high. He translated the Bible into Burmese. His wife translated the Bible into Thai." And Don Richardson points out that Burmese folklore, there's a grim reminder to the people that the answer. And Judson did know this, by the way. And Don Richardson pointed out that the Burmese folklore, there was a belief that someday a man was going to come with a book which would have the truth in it, and Judson spent years and years and years producing that book. Death and hell, death and hell, unless you and I recognize that the person out there without Christ is lost. We will never carry a burden and a person and a personal pressure within our own soul. And my friend, may I challenge you tonight to seek God for that burden in you. The finest missionary, Adoniram Judson. May his legacy live long as he served the living God and inspire you and me to serve him better wherever you are, whatever you do, in the name of the living God. Thank you very much. If you like the story, please subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook. You will hear wonderful story that you will never hear anywhere else. Thank you for listening to me.